After years of hard work, my country, the Netherlands, had finally qualified for the 2025 Smogon World Cup. After a grueling qualifying phase that took multiple months, it was finally time for us to play on the world stage. There was just one problem. We had only barely qualified, and from this point on, our opponents were going to be much better. If we finished in the bottom 4, we'd be relegated back to the qualifiers next year, right back to square one. Some way, somehow, we were going to have to survive the Pokemon World Cup. If you haven't seen how exactly we qualified, I'd recommend watching the previous video first. The format for the main stage World Cup is very similar to the one in qualifiers, with a few small changes. Each team brings a lineup of 5 SVOU players, plus 1 for SV Ubers, SVUU, SS, SM, and or SOU. Players are placed into randomized pools of 4 and play over a 3-week group stage. There are 20 teams total. The top 8 make playoffs, and the bottom 4 are relegated back to qualifiers. Our lineup was mostly the same as it was in qualifiers. The only change we made was putting Wesley in SVOU over Bundy. Wesley mostly manages in team tours on Smogon and doesn't play much himself. That made him a bit of a wild card, so picking him wasn't about knowing how good or bad he was, it was a risk. We simply didn't know what we were going to get from him on this stage. Morale was high after qualifying, but we didn't have very high expectations. Winning the tournament was unrealistic, so our main goal was basically just to avoid relegation. In qualifiers, we were predicted to do poorly at every stage, and going into the World Cup, that expectation was only stronger. The pools were revealed on the Smogon livestream, but the VOD is gone now. Our star player Axel was put in a tough pool, and we were going to need him to perform. Wesley, our wild card, was put into one of the, if not the most difficult OU pools. Everyone in Twitch chat at the time was saying he was going to be fodder and that he was sacrificed to the pool. Most of our other players had pretty doable pools, not the easiest but also not quite the hardest. After waiting for 2 entire hours, they finally revealed the UU pools. I didn't really care much about who I'd play since it's out of my control, but I wasn't the most fortunate. My opponents would be JustFranco, 691, and Kushalos. JustFranco is one of the best UU players in the world, and he beat me in qualifiers in OU. 691 from Team China is also a top tier player in UU, and I wasn't looking forward to having to play against him. Kushalos is another Dutch player, but he was playing for Team Europe. He's a strong overall player but hasn't played much Gen 9. One of my friends told me he predicted me to go 2-1, and that my only loss would be to 691. This seemed to me like a weird prediction, but I was happy to hear some confidence in me, especially as every other prediction had me going 0-3. Just like in qualifiers, however, there was a bit of an annoying problem when it came to UU in the tournament. At the start of pools phase, Masquerade got banned, but it was still allowed for the 3 weeks pool period of World Cup. We just couldn't test with or against it on a ladder, which was very annoying. Our season, just like most of our qualifier rounds, started with Axel. He played against Hayburner, and the early game went pretty well. Axel's team relied heavily on Dondozo to deal with Dragonite, but this Dragonite turned out to be Terrablast Ghost with Encore, a set that actually didn't mind the Dondozo matchup. Because of that, Axel was forced to sacrifice a large part of his team just to deal with it, eventually leading to a loss. In qualifiers, we started 7-1. This time, we were already behind, and we know we'd have to pick up the pace. Our second game was played by Jordy. Before this game, he jokingly tried to manifest that he wouldn't face Sand, Stall, or Toxapex, but his opponent brought all 3. Jordy hoped to win from the lead with Calm Mind Taunt Tapu Fini, but OBB's Tornadus had Toxic for it. Toxic Spikes made the matchup rough, but despite of all that, Blaziken managed to take over the game and secure our first win of the tournament. OGR was up next, and partially thanks to a freeze, Durham managed to make a lot of progress early game. Specs Dragapult was an issue and got some kills back, but King Gambit managed to close out the game. Quinn played next, and things went wrong almost immediately. An early Ivy Cudgel crit put him on the back foot, and he soon lost both Zamazenta and Landorus. That early deficit was too much to recover from. and we ended up losing the match. Poseidon Wrath's game came down to a single turn. If Tornadus hits Focus Blast against Hippowdon, it's chipped enough for Volcarona to take over and win the game. But we missed, and from there, the momentum was flipped and we lost the game. Mitch's game was looking very good until he forgot to consider Z-move on Tapu Koko. Because of that, it managed to kill the rest of our team and we lost. Ivar panicked early in his first game and burned Terra on turn 2. From there, the game snowballed out of control and he lost. Finally, it was time for my first game. I went with a slow, balanced team that I took from a teammate in a different tournament against 691, who was using a weird looking rain team. I predicted the lead Cleavor and got rocks up so that my Deoxys has a free switch in, which looked very threatening into his team. What I didn't expect is for this to be the most specially defensive Assault Fest Swampert the world has ever seen, as it only took 31 from Psycho Boost. This is when I knew I was going to be in for a rough game. In this matchup, I do not have a Specs Tornadus switch in, so I want to play this aggressively. Seeing as his team doesn't love to deal with a +1 special attack Gastrodon, which it gets if it switches in on a water type move, I didn't expect him to click Hydro Pump, so I stayed with Skarmory and died. He could have even just went hard Tornadus that turn, but I don't know why he took that risk. I already start to panic. Tornadus comes in soon after and I don't have a way to deal with this, and it even confuses my Gastrodon. It just kept getting worse. My Tornadus had a chance to live, but he got the roll. His full HP Tornadus normally lives a hit here, so I hope to surprise him with Terra Electric Thunderbolt, but he scouts for it. He continues to embarrass me by Ice Punching on the Hydrapple switch and Flip Turning on Scizor. Barraskewda does just enough to pick off Hydrapple with 2 close combats. Now I just lose a Mon to Barraskewda every time it comes in. I get a few kills in the end, but it didn't matter. I got humiliated in my first ever official team tournament game. It's not just annoying for myself that I lost a big game like that, but now my team was 2-6. If we continued like this, we were definitely getting relegated. Jordy played against IPF right after, but his game looked lost too. He even misclicked Future Sight when he already used it right before. But this was all a part of his plan, as his opponent did not expect our Cortana to be Endure with Salakberry, which cleaned up the game. It was a bit embarrassing that one player has the majority of the wins on our team so far after 9 games, but now it was time for Axel to play again. He used an interesting looking rain team against Starmaster. Early game both players were just trading mons back and forth, which was looking favorable for us, but this Dragonite was going to be a big problem. Ultimately, we went to Terra Bug Raging Bolt, which would have died if you predicted, but we managed to kill the Dragonite. From that point onwards, Axel managed to close out the game pretty easily. In our first Ubers game, we used the Screen Steam into Stall, which wasn't the best of matchups. We really struggled breaking through Drip's team. Baridon and Zacian weren't able to kill Dondozo, and Eternatus was walled by Blissey. Calm Mind Arceus couldn't really break through either, but we got a lucky freeze and managed to win the game because of it. Poseidon Wrath played a long, grindy game, but once Rotom Wash and Heatran went down, there was no way back, and we lost the match. After that, it was time for the only one on our team that was yet to play, Wesley. Wesley had to play one of the best OU players, GXC. Both players brought heavy offense. Tamara died but killed Ting Lu and did a heavy chunk to Darkrai. Goldengo kept DD Dragonite at bay. Iron Moth was traded for a kill on Raging Bolt, and then Wesley sacked Valiant for some damage on Goldengo. TXC's Valiant came in, barely lived Headlong Rush, but then he made a great double switch to Darkrai. Unfortunately for him, however, Goldengo lived on 1 and Thunder Waved it. After sacking Tusk for damage on Goldengo, Wesley set up with Dragonite and won the game in what was a massive upset. We finally made it through day 14. It started off with 3 losses, but we were well on our way back to having a decent record. Day 18 we only had Mitch versus Galal. Galal had 2 big threats this game, Sub Endeavor Current Black and Sword Stand Charizard X. Luckily for us, our Cresselia actually managed to stop both of these threats from creating havoc, and thanks to that, Mitch won pretty easily. We were finally back to a neutral record. The first player on our team to play Furi games was Poseidon Wrath, who was up next. He used Stall this time around and froze High Impulse's Superior turn 1. We killed Landorus early, but then Alakazam killed our Amoonguss. We then revenged it with Scizor, but now Manaphy comes in and causes problems. After a long back and forth, our Calm Mind Blissey kills it, but only does so when it's very low on HP, as he didn't want to give Manaphy more chances to get a critical hit. Bisharp gets phased out by Skarmory, but because our Blissey was so low after the Manaphy kill, Thundurus manages to win the game for the opponent. The day after, Ainscrad played again. Ains made a really nice play early on, switching his low HP Landorus in on a wild charge, seemingly sacking it off, but then surprise killing it as it was Scarf. The game was looking great, but when our Arceus got crit and we missed the skill shot the next turn, the whole game turned around. Now Ains couldn't deal with the threats anymore and unfortunately lost the game. We were now entering the last weekend of the tournament. Weeks of hard work were coming down to this, and it wasn't going to be easy. I had finally completed my prep against JustFranco. It was a sand team that I made myself, and I was more than ready to play. But first, it was time for my teammates to play. Quinn was up next, and used the cheesy Auroraville hate show. We lost our Hatterene turn 1, but then started setting up with bulk up Ceruledge. Bunny switched to Ting-Lu to counter it, but were both Terra Bug and Taunt. He then went to Alomomola, but we were also prepared for that as we had Covert Cloak, meaning we couldn't get Scald burned. Kurum tried to PP stall it as it's not really able to do any meaningful damage. Zamazenta comes in next looking for a Stone Edge crit, which it doesn't get, and we just won the game from there. After that, it was Wesley's second game. He used the same team that Axel used before. One of her best mons this matchup, Tornadus, surprisingly got paralyzed by a Thunderwave Iron Valiant early on. Our Raging Bolt and Pelipper both got low early and then we lost our Ogerpon. The rest of our threats weren't able to do much at this point, and after another while we eventually forfeited. After that, it was up to Quinn again, this time versus DKM. We lost our Deoxys speed turn 1 after getting up Stealth Rocks. It was looking bad as the opponent correctly predicted us clicking Moonblast on Garg, expecting a switch in. Then on the last turn before it died to Salt Cure, we clicked Surf on the Ogerpon. Dragonite couldn't do much here as Moltres was still healthy and we could Will-O-Wisp. We are actually Meteor Beam on Iron Moth and click it on Garg's Protect the second time around, meaning DKM has to sack it. Then he goes to King Gambit to revenge kill with Sucker Punch, but we have Substitute, meaning we got to kill this as well. Zamazenta was proving to be a problem, as it killed Tusk and then our Goldango afterwards. DKM set up an Iron Defense, not knowing our Dragonite set, which was actually Terra Flying, meaning it could kill Zama. He sends in Threats, but we predicted Terra. Moltres barely lives a Terra Blast, but it doesn't matter as Dragonite has now won the game. Jordy then played his last game, which was a very long one, so I won't go in depth. But he managed to continue his form and 6-0 his opponent this game, meaning he was our only 3-0 player, a very impressive campaign by him. It was finally time for me to play against JustFranco. This was the game I'd been thinking about all week. I was very nervous going into this as my team needed all the wins we could get, and because my only game up until this point was such a disaster. For this match, I spent hours and hours trying different things in the team builder, then trying them out in test games, and I just had to hope it would all be enough. He had a similar idea to me as he also used a Sand Spikes team against me. Skarmory isn't really what I want to see this game as it kind of walls most of my mons and is the best spiker against Excadrill, which was my hazard removal. Deoxys speed could also be a huge threat to my team if it was a Focus Blast set. Turn 1 we both lead Thorn and Knock Off. Then I opt to go for damage while he goes for Momentum, wanting to immediately set up hazards. Because I have the Rapid Spinnies with Excadrill, he gets to punish me by making me take Rocky Helmet damage, while also setting up a spike that I couldn't really remove right away. After getting my rocks up, I decide this is a good time to get Conkeldurr in. I predict either Clodsire or Thorn, so I knock off, and the Thorn is in Mach Punch range now. I really did want to try and predict the switch here, but I went for the safe play instead. I at least managed to knock the Rocky Helmet off of Skarmory, which is good for rapid spinning with Excadrill. I get a little bit of chip on Tyranitar, but sack off my Conkeldurr. I see an opportunity to get up some spikes, as he does the exact same thing. I force out Skarm with Thorn and he brings in Deoxys. Depending on the set, it could have killed my Thorn at this range, but I decide to go for the slow U-turn instead. I get my Tyranitar in to set up Sand, as only my Excadrill can outspeed this and I need Sandrush to be active to do so. Unfortunately, he does hit his Focus Blast. Maybe it doesn't look like it, but this turn was actually one of the hardest clicks for me. Clicking Rapid Spin here is so good because it both kills Deoxys and it removes all these hazards. But what if he's Terra Ghost and he clicks it here? Despite that, I decide to Rapid Spin anyway as he switches to Skarm. He then makes a clever double switch to his own Excadrill as he knew I'd go to Heatran. I know that Rapid Spin is pretty likely, but I don't want to just attack him in case he does go for Earthquake. I decide that going Tornadus here, my switch in, doesn't actually punish this well, so I Terra Fairy Magma Storm instead, killing it after it spins. My Air Balloon on Excadrill means it's actually completely immune to damage from Clodsire, as the only attacking moves it runs are Earthquake and Toxic, so I'm immune to it as long as it still has the Air Balloon. He makes a smart move going Deoxys on Stealth Rock, meaning he gets a strong Psycho boost off. I couldn't risk switching in case he made some insane nasty plot play. I go hard Meowscarada. Here I have two options. I try to get Heatran back in as much times as possible, or I try to go for spikes and try to kill Tyranitar and Clodsire long term that way. I decided to go for the latter, as I was certain that his Skarmory was body pressed, meaning my Tornadus could just sit on it for the rest of the game without it doing anything back. I start attacking it to wear it down, but I miss some of my attacks. It's now down to just 4 Roost PP. Make that 3. He just keeps whirlwinding, to which I safely switch in my Tornadus. But disaster struck. It was actually Brave Bird Skarmory this whole time, meaning it did a lot of damage to my Torn. Then I missed Bleak Wind Storm and Focus Blast. At this point, I was already imagining going 0-2. Skarm is down to just 2 Roost PP, but I have to switch out. My Excadrill takes a big chunk from Brave Bird and loses its Air Balloon. I go back to Tornadus, but it just takes so much damage. He roosts again, meaning he's on his last power point. Brave Bird is at least dealing some recoil damage, but my mons cannot keep eating those hits. I go back to Thorn again, but it crits me. It's up to Meowscarada, but it only gets 1 hit of Triple Axle. Franco uses his last roost. I hit the next 2 Triple Axles fully and Meowscarada goes down. But Skarm is only at 8% now, meaning Excadrill can kill it. There's just one big problem. Franco still has Terra. I know that Clodsire's most common Terra type is Dark, which Earthquake wouldn't one-shot. Being sure he was going to Terra here, I decide to not click Earthquake, but instead go for the 30% flinch chance from Iron Head. I click it and his Terra was actually weak to Steel. I kill Tyranitar and I win the game. I actually did it. When Skarmory started Brave Birding, I was sure the game was lost. But I caused a monumental upset and got a huge win for my team, and got revenge for my qualifiers tiebreak game. It was a surreal feeling. Was my friend's prediction actually gonna come true? Well, we still had some other games left that day, so there was no time to think about that. OGR played right after me and clicked on with Ogerpon in front of a Freeze-Dry which actually ended up working. Our opponent does still get the screens up, but isn't able to do quite much with Kommo-o. After a bit more chip, Ninetales is dead after rocks. Treads manages to barely live EQ, making our opponent switch, which stalls out more fail turns. OGR catches the Hatterene double with Gambit. Dragapult clicks Phantom Force into a Gambit switch and we didn't get full parry, so it died. Our Gambit dies to theirs, but not before getting some good chip in. Ogerpon now revenge kills and kills the Kommo-o as well. Hatterene can't do anything on its own and OGR won the game. Mitch played after. He ran into Kyurem Black Psy Spam and got outplayed by Taunt Alakazam. We were running out of margin for error. Our last game of Saturday was Axel. He lost Samurott just 2 turns in. He traded Goldango for Lou a bit later in the game, but then also lost Moth, meaning we only had 2 mons left now. Throwback to Axel's loss, however, where his Dondozo wasn't able to quite stop his opponent's Dragonite. Well, Axel was about to do the exact same here. Terra Blast Flying Dragonite with Encore and Roost actually manages to set up and kill Dawn's whole team, ending on exactly 0 Terra Blast PP. We went 6-2 on Saturday. This was very good for us staying in the tournament, but at this point in the standings, if we did well on the last day, we could even make playoffs. The last day arrived and I was still kind of unsure on what to use for my game, but I had an idea. Gushalos, my last opponent, was 0-2 at this point, and he was on Team Europe who weren't doing so well, so he might have been mentally checked out already. Because of that, I decided to use the stall team that I was going to use in the last round of qualifiers. But back then, I didn't actually end up having to play that game, so it was still unused. So I practiced my stall team the whole day long, testing for as many different matchups. But there was just one thing. I was, once again, scheduled to play last, meaning if my game mattered, the pressure would really be on. But maybe I wouldn't even have anything to play for, as we would still have 5 games left before mine. Day 21 kicked off with Wesley vs Pace. Wesley brought the same Auroraville Hitcho that Quinn won with. Pace traded Landorus in exchange for Big Chip on Gliscor. Tamazenta came in, but after Valiant switched in, Wesley sacked off his Gliscor. He then gets the Veil up, but Scizor ends up critting close combat, so Darkrai still dies. Terralach trades with Raging Bolt before going down. Encore makes the opponent Terralach switch out, to which Wesley once again sets up the Veil. He roars Scizor out and switches to Calm Mind Hatterene, which starts setting up. The rest of Pace's team is no match for Terra Water Hatterene, and Wesley wins his last match. E4 had to be subbed out, so in his place, we substituted in Bundy to play the last 2 games in that slot. Bundy went 0-2 in the qualifiers, but he was determined to make up for that. In his game versus Kashpa, he managed to kill Ogerpon very early on. He sacrificed Glimmora for doing a big chunk to Kingambit. Nothing big happened for a while, but it was becoming clear that Bundy's team really struggled with killing Pecharin, and the opponent had Chansey to deal with his special attackers, which also managed to paralyze Darkrai. Bundy kills Gambit, and then terras his Goldango to kill the Enamorus. The problem was that Bundy's team was getting very low and still couldn't kill Pecharin. He gets a trick off on Chansey which lets him kill it, but he loses more and more mons. Darkrai Ice Beamed into the Pecharin which stays in, and Bundy loses the game. Hours later, it's once again Bundy playing. He basically trades Primarina for Hatterene at the start, but keeps it around to sack later. SD Rillaboom sets up on Pecharin and Bundy doesn't get the Toxic next turn, then sacks Lando to kill it. PZZ switches to Grassy Seed Goldango, as this is the last turn of grassy terrain, and misses Focus Blast. Bundy then switches around to Zamazenta and actually managed to bait out the Terra. He goes Raging Bolt, which just barely ends up living in close combat on the second turn. When Bolt dies, he goes to Iron Boulder, which clicks Terra Fighting and Swords Dance. Landorus comes in, which Bundy sees as a free chance to set up another Swords Dance. After this, Iron Boulder sweeps the rest of PZZ's team. Bundy had finally gotten his win and it was a very important one. This victory meant that we would only have to win 1 of our 3 remaining games to get into a tiebreak for playoffs, and 2 or 3 wins would mean that we automatically qualify for playoffs. It was up to OGR, Ainscrat, and me to close it out and secure our team a playoff spot. Both OJR and Ains played their games at the same time, but I'll cover the OU game first. OJR starts his game off by setting up rocks and sacrificing Deoxys. He then gets good chip on Corviknight as Cinderace comes in. OJR correctly predicts his opponent to go for Core Change, but forgets to consider that it changes its typing to normal, meaning Shadow Ball won't hit it. He had the right idea, but made a frustrating mistake. Goldango barely lives an Earthquake from Teambuilding as it sets up Nasty Plot, almost one-shotting the Ogerpon, but dying the next turn. Speed Booster Tusk with Bulk Up comes in next. It kills the Ogerpon and then taunts the Corviknight on Roost, and then kills that too. It even gets some good chip on Teambuilding as well. Darkrai comes in and hits Focus Blast, forcing it out the next turn. It clicks Nasty Plot on Slowking which clicks Terra, but makes Dib sack Lou right after. Unfortunately, our Darkrai is in Sludge Bomb, and the only move we can hit Slowking with is Psyshock. Dragonite sets up on Slowking and we Terra Blast into Cinderace. Now Slowking is out of range and we lose. Ainz starts this game off by trading hazards with his opponent. He kills Eternatus, but not before it sets up Toxic Spikes, which is a big problem for our team. Then Groudon comes in and starts setting up spikes, and manages to get all 3 layers of spikes up. For a while, both players don't do a lot, but then Koraidon surprises with a Terra Blast Rock kill on Ho-Oh. Soon after this, Scotty switches in Arceus Fairy, which Ainz isn't able to kill, as it stays in for the rest of the game, to which Ainz eventually forfeits. We lost both of these games, meaning I had to win if we still wanted a chance at playoffs. In all my time playing Smogon tournaments, I've been in a lot of situations where I had to clutch up for my team. I used to be pretty bad in those types of situations, such as in the last game of World Cup qualifiers years ago, in which I timed out. But for the last few years, I've won almost every big game I've played. My record in playoffs and tiebreakers in side tours such as PUPL is great, and while I was a little nervous going into this, I was fully ready for the challenge ahead. There was just one unexpected twist however. My opponent, Gushalos, got subbed out and I would have to play one of his teammates, Eeveeto, instead. Eeveeto is someone who doesn't really have much UU experience, but he's a solid overall player that always uses wacky teams. He also had something to play for, as Team Europe had a good chance of getting relegated if he lost this game. I wasn't really thrilled about suddenly having a new opponent right as it was time to play, but I was going to have to deal with it. It was time for me to bring my team to playoffs. I noticed a couple things at Team Preview. Hazards are my team's main way of making progress, with Excadrill and Rapid Minis away, which my team would punish with Rocky Helmet Skarmory. The problem is that Skarmory is also my Zarude switching, meaning it's gonna get knocked off, so it'll be without its Rocky Helmet. My Reuniclus looks pretty strong here if I somehow manage to kill off Zarude, which ended up being Scarfed this game. Reuniclus is also Terra Ghost, meaning it could block Excadrill from spinning. There's also another really important thing to note about this matchup. If my Gastrodon dies, I lose the game to full switch spam. My only other Sandy Shock switch in is Blissey, which it can full switch on, then go to Sliverwing or Zarude, which both force out and can U-turn on it, meaning I would end up in an endless cycle of full switch and U-turn spam. As the game starts, neither of us is taking any risks. And I already managed to catch Zarude with a Sludge Bomb on turn 7. It also took Stealth Rock's damage before, and it took Rocky Helmet damage right after, meaning it's already low. When I go Gastrodon on Sandy Shocks, however, he gets both a critical hit and a 10% chance special defense drop, meaning my Gastrodon dies if I stay on the next turn. My Blissey gets a bit low now and he switches in Latios. My main priority is healing up Gastrodon for the reason I described earlier. I read him switching his Latios out, but it wasn't to what I expected. If I stay in on an Earthquake, Gastrodon possibly dies, but I figured he would just predict the Skarmory switch here, so I take this chance to recover up. Knowing he can't stay on this now, I spike up. Latios comes in and with my Blissey not being that healthy, I make a bold play. I stay in and Sludge Bomb it, and I get the poison. I figured he might not want to attack this next turn, as either Luster Purge into Meowscarada or Draco Meteor into Blissey would both be awful for him, so I make another super aggressive play and recover on the Excadrill switch. Latios comes back in, but I heal the full on it. Then I predict this switch and Earthquake the incoming Fazandipity. Zarude comes in and takes another spike. I have to switch in Gastrodon on the Shocks again, but it once again gets a special defense drop. I start playing it safe after this and he takes advantage of that. His Fazandipity U-turning on my Reuniclus means it takes a Sticky Barb item. I honestly wanted to try and give that to Excadrill instead, but it didn't work out, and this isn't the worst thing in the world at least. Somehow, the next time I switch Gastro in on Shocks, I get crit once again. This luck is forcing me to play really reactively instead of being able to stick to my game plan. Nothing really happens for a while, until he gets his Shocks back in, to which I do decide to sack Gastrodon, as I don't think I'll have another chance to recover it and my Blissey's already low. This is when I decided it's time to play more aggressive again. I Terra Ghost my Reuniclus here, because every time I set up hazards, he just immediately spins them away. I go to reunite the spin block, which makes him switch to Drud with just 4% left, meaning it's dead if it takes another round of hazards. Shortly after, I kill Sliverwing with Skarmory. Unfortunately, that makes me reveal that Skarmory does not have body press, meaning Excadrill doesn't have much to fear, and I'm already at 32% with only one Roost PP left. He almost flinches me down, and then I predict a Rapid Spin with Rioni. I finally knock off those leftovers, but after I heal up, something catastrophic happens. Excadrill clicks Iron Head. Flinches. Excadrill clicks Iron Head again. It flinches again. Right after I'm getting lucked in what's maybe my biggest game on Smogon I've ever played, the opposing team's manager thinks this is a good moment to say this is deserved because I didn't have body press on my Skarmory. Thanks, man. Despite all of this, I still see a path to winning. The thing is that my Meowscarada actually looks really strong here. All of his mons are either low or can't deal with it. There's just one problem. Curves Drud, which outspeeds Meowscarada. This is when I formulate a new plan in my head. I go back into Skarm and I decide I'm gonna get my rocks up to make sure Drud dies if it switches in. Then, as he tries to kill me with Rapid Spin, I sack off Riuni. I go into Meowscarada, and I don't get flinched by Iron Head. Low Kick has a 94% chance to kill, and I don't get the roll. The game really just didn't want me to win this time around. But maybe there was just one more hope. I realized that his team outside of Drud didn't actually kill Blissey, and I still had Toxapex to deal with Drud. But then Excadrill reveals Terra Ghost, though it's walled by my Blissey, which only has Seismic Toss as attacking move. I try to Toxic it with Toxapex, but it gets critical hit, for good measure. It was over. 3 weeks of prepping and fighting, and that's how it ended. Our run was officially over. We didn't make playoffs. Our expectations kind of switched from focusing on not getting relegated to making playoffs, just for us to still get disappointed in the end. It felt really bad, being the one to lose the final game when everything was riding on it. My teammates reassured me that it wasn't my fault, which at least made me feel slightly less bad. I finished the tournament with a 1-2 record. The difference between 2-1 and 1-2 is positive and negative, so despite there only being one game difference between the two, it feels like a big deal. Despite the sad ending, there were still a lot of positive things to look back on. We did a lot better than most people expected, and we didn't get relegated. And now, Dutch players have to play for Team Netherlands instead of Europe. Meanwhile, the players we already had are still steadily improving. There's no predicting what the future holds, but maybe, just maybe, we can win the World Cup this year. Thanks a lot for watching. There was a lot of time between this video and the last one, but I'm planning to stick to a tighter schedule from here on out. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing.